Hello friends, my name is Steve and welcome to Cinephile Saturday episode 3, and today we're talking Terminator and the Terminator franchise with Anthony Self. Tony, how's it going today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you? You all good?
I'm good, yeah. I'm good. Getting ready for some D&D next weekend.
Fantastic. I'm at liberty. I'm going to be doing Arnold's impressions probably throughout this, so just to forewarn you, there might be some classic Arnie impressions going on. But yeah, Terminator.
I would expect nothing less. So what kind of spurred this whole discussion or this whole idea to talk about this series is a thread on the forum about Terminator, whether people prefer Terminator or Terminator 2. Which do you prefer? Because it seems like I think more people would say Terminator 2, especially in our age group. But which do you prefer and why?
It's a tough one because obviously the original is always going to be the best. And it's one of the kind of films that, has that kind of accolade of being, is the sequel superior than the original? And there's a fair finite amount of films that are able to kind of have that label. You have like Aliens, which is your best one. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, I compare the Terminator franchise, or maybe the first two films at least, in the same sort of subgenre of, is the original the best or is the sequel better? Obviously with sequels it has to be bigger, it has to be, there's more finances put together and everything like that. Same thing with Alien. And in a kind of way, they follow the same trend. The original Terminator is a very almost guerrilla sort of shot film that has, brings forward these ideas of man versus machine, time travel, etc., etc. Alien is basically like a B movie set in space, but done with such finesse and acclaim that it kind of surpasses that B-movie style grade. Even like James Cameron himself is like, the whole tech noir sort of element to it. Mm-hmm. And that's, you see the club later on, it's called tech noir, but he wanted to kind of like put that kind of tech noir sort of element into it, which is like a Blade Runner style type thing. So yeah, it's one of those ones. I always flip-flop. One day I will watch Terminator, and I watched it recently, not just for this kind of thing, but just like in general. I was sitting there with my girlfriend. It was like, you know what I'd really fancy watching right now? Terminator. And it's one of those type of films that I can always watch. There's more horror elements to Terminator, I think, than there is Terminator 2. I think I would consider Terminator 2 more of an action film as opposed to the first one. And the same thing with Alien and Aliens. So it's that kind of... what do you prefer? What are you in the mood for? I can always go to Terminator, and I would say I prefer Terminator over Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is bigger, it's badder, it's bolder, and has a lot of ideas that apparently Cameron had for the original film, but due to budget constraints and for logical reasons couldn't put in there. He originally wanted the T-1000, the kind of liquid metal Terminator in the first one, but just it couldn't be done because obviously technology at the time, etc., etc. But yeah, I can always go back to the Terminator because it was a killing machine. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger was the killing machine. Even going in there to there now, what I kind of come away with sometimes is hypothetically what we could have had a different Terminator film, with the lead star not being Arnold Schwarzenegger at all. It could have been someone else. And we always think, Terminator is Arnie, is this big, bulking Austrian man. But originally, the vision was that the Terminator could blend into the crowd. It was going to be someone who you wouldn't sort of bat an eyelid with. And obviously, when you see someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the combat boots and the leather jacket and the gargoyle sort of glasses and stuff like that, it's hard not to kind of miss. But yeah, I kind of always enjoyed the original more because of the pacing of it is just so well done. And it's, I think, the shortest Terminator film in the whole franchise. But the pacing is key to this. When Carl Reese is doing like an exposition dump, for example, to Sarah Connor, it's during like a chase scene, Whereas most films would have the two just talking in a room, the camera, looking at them both. But, he's able to kind of relay the information of how he came from the future to protect her whilst they're basically in a car chase. It's stuff like that. It's those little nuances that just sort of set apart this film from all the others, kind of thing. And it's not a perfect film by a long shot in that way. But that's what I would say. What about you, Steve? What's your favorite?
Well, some great points, and I would almost say that. And I hate slashers. I hate horror slashers. But I think the first Terminator could be like a sci-fi slasher because it's kind of he's almost like a Michael Myers type of unstoppable force kind of thing. But to your point about Arnold not being the first choice, I think I had read that Cameron wanted, I had to look up his name, Lance Hendrickson, the actor who played a cop in Terminator, and he is also Bishop in Aliens. His idea was for him to be the Terminator, and then he thought, well, maybe Michael Biehn would be an ideal candidate. And once he met Arnold, it was, he knew right away it was going to be him. But I think as far as the comparison between the two, between Terminator and Terminator 2, I think you're right about it. T2 being an action movie, and it's more focused on the spectacle. And there's still themes and things there's still a story, and there's not to say it's all spectacle, but I think there was a lot of focus on the special effects, which were amazing. It still look good now today. A lot of the effects, which is wild. But I think Terminator 2, when you watch it, when it was made. Because they use a lot of the hip things that the kids were saying, it's like it's very of that time. And Terminator, other than maybe the soundtrack, the Sith soundtrack, it stands out. But even some movies today use that type of music. So I think it's like a timeless movie you can watch anytime and not feel like you're in a certain time period. Like you can imagine that happening today. But T2, I think they focus a lot on the humor and making Arnold like this father figure, and it just, I don't know. I get what they were trying to do, but trying to make it to where artificial intelligence with the Terminator would evolve and become more human, and we can all cry when he goes into the pit.
I know now why you cry. Yeah.
I mean, I was like, come on. Come on.
So you weren't a fan of the whole father figure type role that he played for John Connor in that one? You didn't like it?
No, not at all. I didn't think that was necessary at all. And I get they wanted to tug our heartstrings when he goes down into the he melts himself and he has his thumbs up on the way down. But it's like, I don't know. Did it really need all that to feel some kind of attachment to it? So it had an impact at the end when he did sacrifice himself. I mean, I don't know.
It's strange that you mentioned it because I remember the first time I watched Terminator 2 and the original 1984, I was 1 year old. I was a baby. I was a toddler when it first came out. So I didn't actually probably see it until probably the mid to late 90s. Then Terminator 2 followed that. I originally, when I first watched Terminator 2, I did like the whole sort of plot with he was essentially becoming a kind of father figure. And I think even Sarah sort of mentions it when they're I think they're in Mexico, and she's seen like John interact with the Terminator, and like she makes this comment about all the other kind of like potential foster father figures, and is like he'll never beat him, he'll never tell him this. Like the Terminator is the kind of, in a weird way, a perfect dad, which is weird when you kind of see it, but then when you see it for a different focal lens, it's like, well, yeah, like this thing doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to eat, its one sole job is to protect this child, and at the end of the day, as a parent, isn't that the main thing? You want to protect your child no matter what. The Terminator just has the exoskeleton and means to do it, like in a kind of way of being able to take umbrage with any kind of act that may happen to the child. So
I guess. But what could he learn from a Terminator? I mean, is a Terminator going to be helping him with his homework and teaching him things and the guiding him? I mean, or is it just protection? I guess if you look at it from that perspective of Sarah in this, she had this military. Judgment Day is coming, and she had that kind of mindset, and so in that mindset it makes sense because you want someone to protect him. Just everyday life, is he though? Is he the ideal protector?
I mean, it's interesting because there's that famously deleted scene from I think the theatrical version where the chip in his head, because he's been programmed at the time not to be self-learning. So John and Sarah find out that, okay, we get this chip and we reset it or something. I can't remember the actual what they have to do sort of thing. And she takes a moment where she's going to break the chip because this is the only time that they can kill the Terminator. But in the theatrical version, you don't know this information because the whole scene was cut because it was too long. But I think it's an integral part to what you were just saying there in terms of the Terminator becoming self-learning. And now that we're in the age of, AI and how that's being used in everyday life now, it's actually a weird sort of, I wouldn't say premonition of things to come. But you could look at the whole Terminator franchise as that kind of premonition of things to come. The whole, robots are going to rise up and, what's the word, in a nanosecond, find that mere puny humans are not worthy, So, there's a lot of themes going on throughout as well, which I loved. And with Terminator 2, with that kind of fact of that scene being cut, and there's a few scenes that are actually cut from Terminator 2. One of them, Carl Reese returning to Sarah in her dreams and her visions while she's in the psychiatric hospital. It just is for her like, this is the one man who, they only shared one night together. But then, love was born from this meeting, perchance. Another thing, though, that I do find quite funny is that in the original Terminator, Sarah Connor is meant to be 19. Yeah. And, I mean, I don't see it. I always envisioned her as like being in her mid-20s at least, if not late 20s, but apparently she's meant to be 19. And this is backed up in the film because when she gives birth to John, and John Connor in the second film is maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little,
Math.
There you go. Yeah. No, I just found it kind of funny. I mean, obviously you've got, characters. Michael Biehn, who plays Carl Reese. He's meant to be 21, I think, but he was actually at the time 27 when he played the role. It's just little things like that, maybe they're trying to get away with, just older actors try to be younger. But the whole fact of, when Sarah Connor, when we first meet her, and a heroine of her time, if not then, now, and everything, like one of the best heroines. I'm sure you could look on any kind of top 10 heroines of our time, and she would definitely be up there, if not in the top 5. And I love her arc. I love her whole story arc. She starts out as this waitress in a diner, and then she's seen that people of her name are being killed randomly by the phone book. And there's that whole thing with, you mentioned Lance Henrik earlier, like I can see it now, they're going to call him the phone book killer because he's just systematically going through all the Sarah Connors, as a computer probably would. It's actually another interesting thing is that apparently, I don't think this was in the script but didn't make it to film, was that initially she was meant to have like steel rods in her leg. That's how the Terminator, allegedly, one of the versions of the script was meant to be that every Sarah Connor that he killed prior to our Sarah Connor, he was meant to bust open her leg to see if these rods were there. Yeah, and I thought this was an interesting concept because at the end of the film, in the first Terminator, when Carl sets off one of the pipe bombs, she has like a metal shard in her leg, and that's apparently she's meant to get some sort of metal rods from that accident. So Skynet know that she's got metal rods, but they don't realize how. I think it was meant to be like a kind of like whimsical take on how the arrival of the Terminator created these things that they would then later find out, sort of thing. But I think it was just a bit too much to be putting into a film, sort of thing, so they left it out. But I thought it was just interesting.
I think that's kind of neat to do that. Yeah, I think with time travel in movies, you can get in trouble if you get too much. If you get too in the weeds with it, you can get yourself in trouble. As fun as it is for people like us, but I think most people would be like, "What the hell is going? Like, this doesn't make any sense." So.
It's funny because I typically hate time travel films. I detest them only because of the fact that you're going to create these paradoxical situations that you can't really talk your way out of. The only kind of time travel film that I always just love is Back to the Future, because even though there probably are, and there's probably like, film buffs that will that say like, actually, this couldn't have happened. I mean, that's suspension of disbelief that time travel, that we can do that. La, la, la. What I mean is, like, in the kind of narrative of the film, throughout a trilogy of films, that you have all these kind of like things happening. I think like Bill and Ted like do it best when it's like, oh, we have to kind of put the thing because our future selves won't see it, all that kind of stuff. That's when you get like, come on. I mean, if you do it in a kind of comedy kind of way, great, fantastic. But if you're doing it in a kind of serious, either horror or that it's you have to know what you're going to be saying, because it can sort of bite you on the arse, basically. But I think with this one, with the original Terminator film, I think it was kept sort of simplistic. It was like, right, from the future, 2 people are sent back. Well, 1 Terminator is sent back, 1 human resistance person to protect, the future child. Okay, that in itself is mind-blowing, right? Okay, yeah. Then this guy turns out to be the dad. Like, oh my God, like, wow. When you get to like, I think when it came to Terminator Genesis, even then I was like, so okay, we're kind of rebooting, retconning everything that's kind of gone on before. There's so much time hopping in that film that it's just like, it got to the point where I was like, what? What is going on? Yeah. But I don't really consider, from the third one on, it's like, come on now.
The third one, I thought it was because they used the whole fate angle where it was just going to happen no matter what, which I thought that was a kind of a neat take on it. It was like, we've been through all these things and it was meant to happen. It's going to happen no matter what. So I thought it was okay. I mean, there's things that are wrong. It's not perfect, but it's, not very, well, it's okay. But when you compare it to the first 2, it's hard to get close. But the parallels to today, though, I think whenever AI takes a turn or whenever we have advancements, somebody is bound to say, oh, Skynet, or, oh, haven't you seen the Terminator? Don't you know what's about to happen? So it is, there's some parallels that could be drawn from it even today. And like with Sarah, when in the film where whenever she uses a phone, they locate her. And that's the thing. There's, privacy, data privacy. Those are all things that are explored in a movie from 1984 that are still relevant today.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like, if you think about we're going back to the original Terminator sort of thing, like some of the innovative things that they, like even the laser sight on the gun, at the time, it's common standard now, like you see it in every film, but back then it was like, I think it was like a really sort of new type of thing, because you had to have like a massive battery pack to have this particular laser sight on these guns. Either other sort of innovative things. I mean, just the whole concept, which is interesting because whoever you speak to is going to have a different version of, did James Cameron rip off Harlan Ellison with some of his sci-fi, The Outer Limits sort of scenes. And when you kind of watch some of the scenes, you're like, yeah, they're pretty similar. The whole alleyway sequence where the original, protagonist kind of, there are very similar things. But then once again, whoever you kind of speak to, it's like Harlan Ellison was given, what do you call it when it's you pay out of court, basically. You've paid.
Oh, like he's settled, or
that's it. Yeah, they settled out of court, sort of thing, and now they have an acknowledgement on the film, on the end titles, to Harlan Ellison. So, I think whoever you speak to, there are different stories. I.e., did James Cameron apparently on a Starlog magazine article back in the 80s said like he just kind of ripped off a few things. The whole kind of concept of the Terminator, he said that he had this fever once. He was working, I think, on post-production of Piranha 2, and he basically was working tirelessly, exhausted. He had a fever, and he had this dream of this kind of exoskeleton coming out of these flames, which then transpires to be the end of the film. And then for like some of the sort of more narrative-driven sequences, he said he just ripped off a bunch of Outer Limits shows. Now,
Wow.
that can be contested, and like other people were saying, like, no, that wasn't the case at all, and la 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 la. But I think it's interesting, because at the end of the day now, to find something truly original is very hard. I think most filmmakers will be, borrowing, if not stealing, from their peers or from other films, like Quentin Tarantino, for example. As much as a great filmmaker as he is, like I think he's gone on record to say, like, yeah, I saw this scene from this really obscure film in the 70s and I'm going to use that in my film. Fine. Like, the thing with Harlan Ellison as well is, like, apparently he turned around and said, like, if James Cameron just came to me and asked me permission to use these things, everything would be fine. Where would that be? I don't know, but there you go.
Yeah, I didn't know that they had settled, and he was. See, what was there? Were those elements major elements in the film, or were they just kind of fill in?
There's basically, well, the contrast of there's one Harlan Ellison Outer Limits called Soldier, and one with Demon with a glass hand. In Soldier, it's basically two future men are sent back in time. So there are some very stark comparisons to be made, I think. Certain set pieces from memory, there's the alleyway, the infamous, like, when Michael Bihn's character, like, drops from the light storm in the alleyway, and then you have, like, these cops. It's almost, scene for scene, those kind of elements. But then, you can... It's one of those things, isn't it, where you could say, like, well, there's an idea I'm just trying to think of. He's done it himself, like with Avatar. You could say that Avatar is really more of a thing of Pocahontas, or that kind of thing, where colonists are coming into taken from an indigenous tribe or whatever it may be, sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, you can say, like, there are certain thematic elements at play that are, like, stand the test of time. If you have, like, a hero, he needs an obstacle, and that type of thing. Then if you go through the kind of, the 7 rule process of storytelling and whatnot, then you can sort of find that. But then there's obviously lifting from source material and seeing something and thinking, that looks pretty cool, I'm just going to do it. And, So I think, I mean, at the end of the day, he got paid out of court. I think he, and he gets an acknowledgement at the end of the film as well. So,
yeah, that's, I guess he wins at the end, I guess, but still, he should have maybe made the phone call or just asked him. But,
I think that's the thing, though. I mean, like, you can sort of unconsciously, I suppose, see something. Like, I can, you can sort of watch films from yesteryear, like Christopher Nolan's Inception, for example. Like, I didn't know this at all. Like, when I first saw Inception, it blew my mind. But even he, like, you can see now Paprika, animated manga sort of thing, and you can see a lot of what happens in Inception from that movie. It's mind-boggling that the amount of things that directors or anyone else can be influenced by, writers, artists, and you need that. I think you do need to be influenced by other cultural things around you, because then what's going to, if you're a writer, for example, sort of thing, what's going to ignite your inspiration? Is it going to be this, that, or the other sort of thing? At the moment, I'm writing like a sci-fi novel, and that's basically based off Alien and The Thing. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care, because I want to write a creature feature sort of book. And it's going to be heavily influenced by those type of things. I'm obviously going to make it hopefully original enough that it will kind of be separated from that. But there will be nods to that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think when you get to plagiarism, though, that's the sticky point sort of thing, isn't it? So,
have you ever been writing for your for one of your books, and you have a passage written, and you look back on it and say, this is almost identical to a movie or to another book that I've read. I should probably just like redo this. So has that ever happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of writers will kind of, if you're a Stephen King fan, for example, I'm sure you've probably read a lot of his books, and there'll probably be times where you kind of until you find your own voice, will kind of try to emulate the kind of author that you admire the most, sort of thing. So you're probably going to use a lot of idiosyncrasies isn't the right word, sort of thing, but like emulate sort of certain formats, certain paragraphs to kind of fit with your kind of own stuff, if that makes sense. I don't think it's just one of those things where I think you can unconsciously lift certain things. I mean, there's, the Akira shot, the motorcycle. How many times have you seen that in film since Akira? Even like, I think Nope, Jordan Peele, quite categorically stated that he wanted to have this particular shot of the motorcycle doing the Akira sort of, badass. Because sometimes there are just badass moments in films and TV and in books, and you just want to just say, like, I'm just going to do that myself because it's badass. So, yeah, I mean, I think you can unconsciously do it. You get to a kind of point where you're just basically copying something. And there are a lot of YouTube videos that you can watch that will... I watched one, I can't remember off the top of my head sort of thing, but there's so many that have, like... Obviously, when you have like a film like Predator, like Alien, like Terminator, they're going to be rip-offs, they're going to be copies. And they're usually going to be like Roger Corman style level of budget going on here. So people just rip, from the main source. And some of them are hilarious. Some of them are actually really good. Some of them are Tommy Wiseau, so bad it's good sort of thing. It's dependent on how your mind is set and how you're predisposed to sort of see them. I mean, there's been there's so many films from yesteryear, from the 80s, following on from Terminator, for example, that were just following the same kind of concept, like a cyborg is going out to kill these people and then pew pew laser beams and stuff like that. But I have that disposition where I can watch those and I can just be totally invested in it because I love watching those type of things. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Especially with the original Terminator and Terminator 2, seems like this franchise has influenced more than one generation too. Because I think they were 9 years apart, something like that, the movies.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it now. It's still going. The most recent, it's still going. maybe the last film was the death knell. It's interesting when you have, you quite rightly, I think, said the original is more of a kind of like horror, it's slasher type of thing with Michael Myers, like this unstoppable sort of boogeyman type character. And the Terminator is that. It's like this unstoppable killing machine that only has one directive, is to kill Sarah Connor. And it shares a lot with those type of late school, 70s sort of slasher films. I mean, you could sort of argue that Sarah Connor is a kind of final girl. You can have all those kind of discussions. But I think, in terms of... the franchise, look at something like Friday the 13th, which had, I don't even know off the top of my head, probably 13 films now to date, probably more than that. Then when you get to, the kind of reboot, retconning sort of stage of things, the most recent one that I can think of is the new Halloween trilogy. So you have the kind of sort of soft reboot. So everything apart from Halloween 2 didn't happen. Now we're going to create this new trilogy, and we're following Laurie again. 30, 40 odd years later. And Michael's back, and da 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 da. And the thing with the Terminator is, I think once you got to what was it after Terminator 3 was Salvation, right?
I think so, yeah.
And I really like the concept of Salvation. The execution, not so much. But the actual... I think in the original Terminator film, one of the things that always made me kind of like go, wow, I really want to... When you have the kind of the future scenes, when Kyle Reese is kind of either dreaming or remembering, his upbringing, which is in this apocalyptic wasteland, where you have these kind of hunter-killers, flying through the air and shooting any living organism that remains on the topsoil. I always felt like, wow, I wanted to find out more about that story as well. And so there was obviously at some point discussions of like, let's do the, and I still think they could do that. I would love to see it, because I think Salvation was a really good attempt at looking at the future war and seeing how it's done. But for whatever reason, it just didn't, as I said, like the execution didn't work for me. But they could still play around with that, because I think the whole John Connor storyline, it's done now. Yeah. And Arnold being the age that he is, that's done now. There are so many stories that could be set in that particular universe that I think the whole point of it is with Dark Fate, I think that was, it was a death knell for the franchise. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what happens to a lot of these type of films, where they're so successful that, you just have to do one bigger and badder and better and blah, 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 blah. But with Dark Fate, there seems to be a trend of like, as you mentioned earlier before, sort of thing, like our generation sort of thing. Hollywood seems to be doing this thing of like, hey, let's get this old IP character back in. We'll get them back into the force. And there's like almost this kind of handing down the baton to this kind of person. And it's like, you're trying to sort of, through rose-tinted glasses, bring us back to our youth, but you're not really doing it in a way that was as appealing as the first time. Come up with some original ideas. But executives are too scared now to kind of like try, I guess, new ideas. Like you have this you have this great universe, but what emotionally impacting, what could you do with that story now that's not already been done before? And then since the original Terminator that came out in 1984, and it's being done so many times now with different caveats and different sort of people and different like, what could you do now that could be as original but set in the same universe? I don't know personally.
With each new movie in these franchises, not only Terminator, but other franchises that keep going when they probably should stop or at least take a break, does it tarnish for you personally the first couple of movies? Does your memory get tarnished?
No. I think, like, for example, if we're talking about Terminator sort of thing, so like with Terminator 1, instant sort of classic. I can't tell you the first time I watched it, but like it sort of resonated something within me. I don't know what. Terminator 2 then was like, the sequel that, what I said like at the beginning of this podcast, like, it's very few films that you can do a sequel that's actually some people would consider better than the original. Yeah. The 3 is not sometimes a magic number. We've seen a lot of trilogy films. I think the only example I can think of is probably Indiana Jones, where maybe the second one, people don't like the second one, but it's the first and the third. But the Temple of Doom isn't the best one out of the 3. And then you had Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And now most recently you had Dial of Destiny. And I think you probably have to. Going back to your original question, does it tarnish the original films? No, not one iota, because those films will always have a special place in the heart for me. Those were the films that, when I was growing up, either had some kind of impact, whether it be empathetic, emotional, intelligent. Like, there was something about that film for me that really got me. It's the more recent ones. Maybe because I'm becoming a jaded, belligerent, cantankerous old man. But like, you can see, I think a lot of what Hollywood is spewing out these days is to kind of appease our generation by saying, hey, look, Indy's back. Yeah, he might be 80 years old, but don't you worry, Sonny Bob Jim. We're going to get him like cracking a whip like it was. Yeah, but then it doesn't have the same magic that the originals had. Like, and some stories, like with going to Indiana Jones, that for me was a perfect trilogy of films, and you should have stopped there. But then the old cash cow, you gotta flog that dead horse until you get to the marrow sometimes.
Yeah.
But with Terminator sort of thing, I think they should have probably stopped at 3. I like the idea of Salvation. I think they could have done something extra special with that, and they still can. I just think maybe the trying to find the right sort of market. Once again, saying like AI is such a buzzwordy thing these days, and it's such a kind of in our infrastructure at the moment that you could really do something special with that, I think.
With Terminator, or just
with Terminator, like having some kind of juxtaposition with what's happening in our life nowadays, with how we use AI, to how it could go down with a potential film using the kind of Terminator sort of brand. Yeah.
Do you worry about AI and the advances that we're making in it? Does it worry you?
I think the only worry that I have is potential job losses for certain classes of field, if you get my meaning, sort of thing. I think there are some jobs that will be made autonomous in that respect. Like we can already kind of see it. It's already kind of happening in your local supermarket. When you have the self-checkout aisles and you're basically doing. I mean, you look about 20 years ago, and you always had like checkout aisles and stuff. I don't know what it's like in America in that respect, but like over here, it's basically like you want to. It's all quick. Everything wants everything now, and I think you have everything at the touch of a button on your phone, right? If you want food, bang, you've got it within 20 minutes. You want to watch a film, bang, you've got it on your screen instantly. I think we've become too reliant, in that respect on sort of certain technologies. And I think with certain job fields, AI will, if it's not, it's already being used in the scary, I guess the scary thing is like when you see like sort of things like at the moment with the writer's strike, and I think a lot of people in certain elements of hierarchical power are going to be like, okay, so we can't use these actors, we can't use this. Let's turn to AI, because I'm sure there probably are already shows that are like, will have a little disclaimer at the start saying this show was entirely made from AI, because then you don't have to pay writers, then you don't have to pay actors, you don't have to pay. You can just basically log in some things on your computer and you can have yourself a show right there. Will it be as mad as a box of frogs? Probably. But we would be naive to think that's not already being done. If not already, there's a series. I'm pretty sure there's probably a show out already that's kind of run by AI in that respect. So that kind of thing is a little disconcerting. In the respect of, you have actors, and I'm not talking about like the millionaire actors that you see on YouTube, like rallying with the strikes and stuff. Come on, man, you're a millionaire. At the end of the day, what does it matter to you that you take a sweet little sort of time off? You take a year off. That's not going to affect you. It's the fledgling actors, the ones that are like trying to make a living. Like they've given up everything. They've come to Hollywood, baby, to make it, and they're living in a kind of flea-infested, rundown apartment. And they're the ones that are actually going to do auditions, and they can't now because they're the ones I feel for. And I don't see why we're not hearing more from their kind of story. Why are we seeing the new Snow White, Rachel Zegler? Why are we seeing her have a sort of tantrum hissy fit? Because, you're a millionaire. I don't care. Let's look at Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm getting onto a rant. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're fine.
But... what was the original question? So AI, yes, it's disconcerting because I think it's going to take a lot of jobs away from people. I don't think that it's going to be as bad as like the Terminator franchise will be. Like the robots will take over and then consider us mere mortals, not worth it kind of thing, and set the nukes off. There are already too many people in power that have that kind of authority, so that's maybe the more concern.
That's scary.
Yeah. But then, you go through trends, don't you? Like you look at the kind of, there was like apocalyptic. I wouldn't consider Terminator an apocalyptic sort of film. Like, you have different films like that deal with those type of themes. But yeah, I think it will be interesting. The next 5 years are definitely going to be interesting. Look at deep fakes at the moment now.
Yeah.
You know, and see how that's going to be used, because it's really that kind of stuff. It's in its infancy, I think, at the moment. I mean, I'm not some like tech graduate sort of person. I don't know, you know, the ins and outs of it. I haven't studied too religiously anything about it, but like I think you know, from what you can see is that the original writer strike, I think in '91, basically heralded the kind of reality shows that we see today that are still used today. You know, it was Cops, because the original writer strike. I think it was '91. It could be '94 or something like that.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, but because obviously you didn't have the writers doing their job, someone had the, and I'll be honest with you, great idea to go like, well, we can't use let's just get a camera, follow the local law enforcement and see how they get on. And that became Cops. And then, you know, that led way to all these different shows about, you know, some would say maybe there's too much of that now.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm one of them. But it's that kind of thing of, you know, sometimes I want to watch, you know, someone go into the woods and spend 6 months up there, you know, battling to survive. That's fine, you know. But now with AI, yeah, I don't know. Do you know of it? There must be a show. There must be some TV show at the moment that is like, Herald is like, oh, this show was made entirely by AI or something like that. There's got to be something like that out there now.
I don't think so. At least they haven't admitted it yet.
Yeah.
I know that's it. I think it's been assisting with scripts and stuff. So I think the way that I understood it was that they have admitted that they pump it through AI and then they have people clean it up and then fix things and make it, you know. But I don't think we're that far off from that happening, from it being 100% AI.
Wasn't there some controversy over the most recent Marvel Secret Invasion, because the intro titles are AI generated basically, and it's that kind of thing of, okay, so are you saving money by just like, you know, instead of, you know, going to a company and saying like, because let's be honest, as much as I love, you know, whatever TV show it might be, you know, like True Detective, for example. I remember when the original first series of True Detective came out and you had a do-do-do-do, and we had that sublime sort of intro sequence as well that kind of crisscrossed, you know, the actors' faces with like, you know, religious symbols and like different things. And since then, like, you've just seen, like, I'm sure there are probably awards that are given out to like intros of shows because they're so good. And to kind of have a company go out once again, like, this goes back to the whole thing that I was saying before. If you just start using AI to kind of do your intro for your show, great, fantastic. Who do you have to pay? No one. Are you saving costs? Sure. It's like the tax breaks you get in certain countries. That's why a lot of like film, like Uwe Boll sort of thing, is infamous for being able to use the tax of, is it Germany sort of thing or whatever, to film in certain countries, and that's why he's been able to finance a lot of his films. Like, if you can find a loophole in something, people are going to exploit it, you know, at the end of the day. So
if he can finance a movie, anybody can.
That's it. For all you kind of people, all you kind of filmmakers, prospering film, just follow the Uwe Boll track, man. Find the loopholes. Man. Do it.
He's going to challenge us to a boxing match, though, when he hears this.
You go first, Steve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He looks like a pleasant fellow. But, yeah, I just wonder, you know, as you were talking about Skynet and AI, and so Skynet was invented in the franchise to protect us, and then it decides that we're a threat, so it turns on us. So in Terminator 2, when Arnold becomes a father figure, would that same thing happen? Would he start as a protector for John and then eventually turn on him because AI?
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, like,
I don't know.
No, I mean, like, it's interesting because, like, obviously we forget now as well, because I mean, I don't know about you, Steve, but I've watched it so many times now that you forget that when the film originally came out, I could be wrong here, but I mean, we didn't know whether there was that whole play, wasn't it, of like, Robert Patrick, like you didn't know if he was the good, like you didn't know if Arnold was going to be the good guy or the bad guy sort of thing. And then when that scene where he runs out into the corridor and he's like, get down, and he then shoots the shotgun sort of thing, and he's like, you see these like the liquid metal thing, then you're like, oh, then it's kind of changed on its foot sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that nowadays, with like, with Cyberdyne and whatnot sort of thing, with the AI, I don't know. I think we would have some kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like safety lock device or something that would be, wouldn't allow certain things that, when missile fires, there must be like a kind of, there's a what do you call it, like a fail-safe.
Like a fail-safe.
Yeah, I would like to think that there would be something along the lines of that. It's interesting as well because, like, in the original Terminator film, once again, another deleted scene is that you find out, like, when they're in the when Carl and Sarah run to the factory with all the automated robotics and stuff. That is, I think it's Hyperdyne or it's Cyberdyne. That's the original Skynet sort of thing. So it kind of carries on into the second film. It's a deleted scene, so you don't see it. But like when it's almost like a kind of, the ambulance doors close, and as it drives away, you see the sign of the building, which is like Cyberdyne. So that's the original genesis of. In the second film, like when you see, they keep the arm and they keep the microchip, and it's Miles, isn't it, sort of thing, that's like working on the sort of like Terminator basically, and creating Skynet. That's where it all comes from. So there is that kind of like roundabout sort of like thing which happens in time travel films that you get, which is really good in this kind of instance. And once again, like it's a scene that I think should have been kept in, but obviously back then it was like, we have to cut your film down, and at the end of the day as well, but you have to remember that this is like James Cameron's like first real film, so he's probably like had a lot of ideas, a lot of different things in there that didn't make the cutting room floor, because basically it's keeping the pace. And that's once again like one of the best, I think, things about the film is like the pacing of it. Like there's never a dull moment, and whether there's exposition, and there's a lot of exposition, there's a lot of like talking sort of segments, but they're done in such a way that the dialogue, like Lance Henriksen's character, like the cop character, and like they're so sassy with each other sort of thing, but it is that kind of like, cop sort of like real like 80s style cop film that I really appreciate and enjoy sort of thing. Like when he puts the cigarette, he takes a sip of coffee, and he goes like, oh, that's 2 days old, and I pop my cigarette in it sort of thing. It's like stuff like that. It's just like, it's great. It's great.
So speaking of Miles, so you're Sarah Connor, and you know that he has the arm and the chip. Do you kill him, or what do you do? What choice do you make?
Would I change the fate? It's interesting. You have that whole debacle. It comes back to the whole Hitler thing, doesn't it? If you could go back in time and kill Hitler as a baby, sort of thing, would you do it? No, in that instance, because he's a baby, obviously. But would you kill, like, is that... yeah, I mean, come on. Crazy.
Wait until he's like 5. And then
maybe wait until, he's like 6 or 7. And then, then we can have a discussion.
That's okay. Yeah.
But do you kill someone... Do you go back in time to kill someone because of something they haven't done yet? That's the whole crux of it, isn't it, really? Knowing that they will go on to develop this particular thing. Interesting. I kind of believe in the whole karmic butterfly effect thing. So even if you did go back, or in Sarah's case, killing if she did kill Miles, there would be probably some other instance of it happening. Or the whole point of going to the facility to crush the arm, or destroy the arm, and destroy the chip, is that the research can't be followed. But there's always it might just set it back like maybe 20 years or 15 years or 10 years or however, but it's just basically delaying the almost inevitable, I think. Yeah. Would you, Steve? Would you go back? Would you, if you knew the information of someone who was about to create some kind of tech that would ultimately lead to the end of the world?
I don't know that it can, because I think I get where she's coming from and why she thinks she has to kill him, but you might want to just like have a talk with him first.
Just have a chat,
you know,
little
just
chinwag,
like,
yeah.
hey, I know the future. I'm not sure he would listen, but maybe, I don't know, maybe try to give him information that only he knows, that try to prove that you know more than he would expect, or try to prove that you have some credibility, that you know things that only he knows, and try to talk him out of doing it, maybe. But then again, if he has the knowledge in his brain, then who knows what can happen? I mean, he may change his mind a week later or 2 weeks later, and Judgment Day happens. So I guess the question is it worth one person who hasn't done anything yet? Really, he's just doing his job, research. Is it worth that one person to save humanity? I guess that's the question that she's answering.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well, because obviously following in Terminator 2 then, there is that scene where, Arnold reveals his arm, his exoskeleton arm, and he even says, like, aren't we changing things now? Like, I won't continue my and she was like, no, we have to destroy everything. That goes to the Cyberdyne systems, and he inevitably gets killed anyway by the SWAT team that enter the building. And then, from memory, from Terminator 2, then Terminator 3, isn't the TX sent back to kill then John Connor's, like, his future sort of soldiers, his, like, lieutenants and stuff? Isn't that the main sort of concept?
I think so. It's been a while.
Yeah. Because in that one, then Sarah Connor's dead, and the TX is sent back to kill his... And at that point, it's getting a little bit... Now we're kind of going to the other fruits in the tree, and we're kind of, like, picking other things that aren't maybe relevant, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with Dark Fate, and it's a controversial sort of subject, I guess, if you will, but then the fact that it follows straight from Terminator 2, and I think Sarah and John are in, like, Hawaii or something. They're on some beach. Have you seen Dark Fate? Are we giving any spoilers?
Are we talking?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, I'll never watch it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, I wouldn't waste your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, they kill John Connor as the Edward Furlong age kind of thing. So they're on the beach. Terminator 2's just happened. They're obviously gone on vacation, because why wouldn't you? And
you would. Yeah.
As you would. And then a CGI Arnold comes up and just blows John Connor away in a shotgun. And it's like, it kind of, we were talking about before about the kind of whole, like, does it tarnish your version of, like, the original films? No, these new ones tarnish because you're basically now having this, you've killed a character that is meant to be the future resistance of mankind. Okay, I get it. That sets the scene, right? That, you're doubling down. But then you're just kind of rehashing the same story again. So now, instead of John Connor, then there's this girl who's going to be protected. And it's like, well, you're just doing the same thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well,
there's no originality, basically, I think is what it's coming down to. If it made out something else that, I don't know, like, have John Connor. I mean, we did have the Christian Bale version of John Connor in his like adult form. And
that movie's more well known for the behind the scenes outburst that. Christian Bale had, the good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, once again, like, I have to give kudos to Anton Yelchin, who played, like, a young Carl Reese in that film. He perfected Michael Biehn's mannerisms down to a T. Like, even the kind of, like, talking through gritted teeth type thing, and, having that kind of, like, sort of sweat. Like, it's a shame that, he passed away so young. In such a tragic sort of way, but like, I like the fact of, once again, they're bringing back kind of characters, the Carl Reese character, but now he's a teenager. So they kind of flipped. There were a lot of ideas that worked really well with Salvation. It just, I don't know, when it got to the sort of Transformers sort of phase, I was like, oh no, Do you remember there's like an Autobot that kind of rises, that kind of like clutches them all and everything like that? It was like, obviously Transformers was a big thing at the time, and you can tell some studio exec was like, you know what we need in this film? A Transformer. A fucking Transformer. Let's get it in here. And they're like, oh, come on, Matt, really? Yeah. So, hits and misses, right? You got to pick your battles and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I just think they need to put it to bed and just let it sit for 10, 15 years and then let AI write the next script for it.
Wouldn't that be great? The next Terminator film written by AI. Oh God, could you imagine?
Oh yeah.
Someone's had to have done that on Chat GP. Just like basically put in like, right, I want to write a script about a future war that the robots make, and da 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 da. It would be hilarious to see the results of that. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. It may come to pass. We'll see. Yeah.
Never know. Know.
We're all in trouble. But cool. No, I appreciate you coming by to talk Terminator and the franchise, and I think even today I think Terminator and even T2, even though I think Terminator is better, I think it's an important franchise, and it did a lot for science fiction, and we still talk about it now with AI.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like as you said, like it's one of those type of films that, whether you consider a kind of almost slasher sci-fi sort of film, if you consider it a kind of tech noir sort of Blade Runner-esque type thing, even if you see it as an action film, I think you get away a lot. It's interesting to me. Someone who has never seen it before. That's the thing. Like sometimes you see these like reaction videos of like people watching films from yesteryear or from the 80s and stuff like that, and it blows my mind because like I'm so jealous of that person. Because obviously you wouldn't be able to get back that kind of like first time feeling of watching something. I guess the kind of paradoxical time loop of it is that because so many films have like ripped off, taken things from it from now, I think subconsciously you kind of feel that you've already kind of seen the film because it's been done so many times since then. I go back to, as I was saying like before, like I would have loved a Lance Henriksen Terminator. I would have loved to see like the kind of the Terminator, how the original version of it was meant to be like this kind of character that is meant to blend in with the crowd, because I think he would have done a phenomenal job apparently as well, because there are some sketches that James Cameron did of Lance Henriksen as the Terminator, because apparently he wasn't being filled as the guy, but I think he and you're right there, Steve. I think he and James Cameron were friends and stuff, and there was a pitch meeting that apparently he went into where for the I can't remember the name of the executive sort of thing, but Lance Henriksen got dressed up in this. He apparently cut his head, and he put like gold stuff in his teeth, and like just really wanted to kind of freak out the execs so that they would help him along. And he sort of did the same thing with Bishop and Aliens as well. Like, he had these contact lenses where he like wanted to make himself look a bit. He gave himself like 2 pupils in the eye, and James Cameron was like, "That's a bit too much."
Dedicated,
but and O.J. Simpson obviously as well. Was considered to be, but the executives turned around and said like he was too nice to be perceived as a killer, which is funny in itself. I think a version of the Terminator that could have been is interesting to kind of see, and there's no reason why it couldn't be done now. Like a different version. I think I agree exactly what you said. Like I think they need to kind of let it rest for a while. I mean, Dark Fate came out a couple of years ago now, right?
I think it's like maybe 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. So it's still fresh. I think you need to get rid of the IP characters. Like you have to disassociate yourself from Arnie. Like, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, like, love seeing him as coming back, but it's the same thing with Indiana Jones. You can't have these guys running around doing the thing they did, like when they're in their prime. Bring a new story to the table. Bring some originality to it. Let's look at the future war. I know there was like a recent, the most recent game that came out, I think. Which was a couple of years ago, was all based in the kind of future war and stuff, and they did a great job of like reenact like the sounds. the Brad Fiedel sort of like score. And that's, you mentioned earlier about the sort of synth sort of score as well. Like it's got to be said that the score in this film is absolutely brilliant. I love it. The fact that, I think he sort of went on to say that when he was composing it, he wanted to have like a kind of heart beating in like a metallic sort of chest. And like when you hear that doom, 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 like it's like, wow, yeah, man. It's really good. Yeah. Yeah. As I said, like it's one of those type of films that I can always watch. I watched it a couple of weeks ago, and now I could watch it again. And you can pick up little different things. Like you can pick up little different things every time you watch it. I prefer the first film to the second film, definitely. Yeah.
I'm not alone.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not alone. Yeah.
It'll be a contest. Like everyone will have that. Like people say like, no, I prefer the second one, or people even like the third one and stuff like that. That's fair play.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer. I think it.
No.
When T2 was released, that blew everyone's mind with the special effects, but if you'd have asked me, you'd have asked 11 or 12-year-old me, I would have said T2. But now looking back, even with, I used to always be in Aliens is the best in the series, and now I'm leaning, well, maybe Alien is better.
Yeah.
I go back and forth, so it all in time our opinions change and outlooks change.
But they're both brilliant, like in the terms of the franchise sort of thing. Like as I said, they're both brilliant films in their own merit. Like they bring something different, and that's what I love. Especially with Terminator, with Alien, they bring their own different aspects to it. Like Alien is like a straight up horror film. Aliens, I would say, once again directed by James Cameron, more of an action film. More of the merits. Basically, it's a Vietnam film. He's going to say like his interpretation of it was like a kind of statement of Vietnam. So there's all these different caveats as well that I love. And you can smarter men more than me sort of thing will probably be able to kind of put more liking with the AI stuff in the original Terminator film. I just find it's really interesting that a film that was made over 40 years ago now is still relevant in terms of its message, I guess. Time travel aside, people coming back to save future resistance leaders and stuff like that. It still holds up. Some of the effects don't, unfortunately. But
there's some bad effects.
but I sort of love that as well. I love those kind of like the Arnie head. When he's in his apartment, he's taking out his eyeball and stuff like that, and you kind of like, a little bit janky now. I think there's someone as well. There was a guy on YouTube that basically he got really irritated in Terminator 2 when they're at the was it like the furnace place, the
refinery thing,
the refinery, yeah. And there's a scene where, like, basically you have the kind of the Arnold metallic eye that doesn't look like. So, for example, as he's meant to be looking left, his eye goes left, but like the robot eye doesn't because obviously it's a prosthetic. So someone went and basically digitally, made the eye move at the same way. It's a little thing, but it's just like I was like, wow, that's really great. Yeah. After this, like, just type in the thing, and it's like he's rotoscoped the red eye to kind of look the same way that Arnie obviously does when he's looking. It's stuff like that you got George Lucas who can do like 7 versions of one film. After every year, like he'll set up a new release. I don't see why you can't do that for Terminator. Why not? Let's improve it.
Yeah, I guess you could. I think some of those bad effects even it adds some charm to
definitely
to it. It's but
it's like the Ray Harryhausen. Like I love, and obviously in Terminator as well, you do have the kind of stop motion animation sort of thing. I love that. Do you know what? Even when I think the first time I watched it, that was the scariest part for me at the end when Sarah and Carl are running into the factory, and then you just see this kind of limping stop motion. That for me, that was the scariest thing. I was probably too young to understand like stop motion and why it was so surreal in my head, because I probably hadn't sort of seen any of like Sinbad or Jason and the Argonauts and that kind of stuff at that time, so I didn't really appreciate the kind of the fluidity of motion that stop motion has. But but it was spectacular. Once again, it left an impression on me. And even now, like as I said, you can still watch it back, and maybe there's a little bit of jankiness sort of there, but as you said, it adds charm. It adds charm, and it adds to the whole kind of. It didn't pull me out.
Yeah.
Maybe the Arnie head when he's in the apartment pulls me out a little bit, but
it's pretty bad.
It's not great.
Yeah,
it's
pretty bad. It's still great, but it's pretty bad. But it is what it is. So one of those things. But in the meantime, if someone wants to get in touch, where's the best place to find you?
I have a channel called Horrible on YouTube. I have written a couple of books, but you can find me. You can find me there on Old Horrible on YouTube, where I do some gaming playthroughs, some horror games, some reviews. Most recently, tried my hand at some sort of Audible stuff of my stories. Judge me for them and see how it goes. Yeah, see what you like. Yeah. Judge me. Yeah.
When can we expect your sci-fi novel?
Oh, I mean, it's early stages. I've probably got about 50 pages done so far.
Okay.
I've been playing Baldur's Gate recently, unfortunately, so that's kind of sucked up all my time. It's what are we now? August, basically September. If I had a first draft done by the end of the year, I'd be a very happy person. I don't think that's going to be the case, but yeah, I know where it's going. It is. I mean, before I was saying to you, Steve, it's basically going to be a homage to everything that I've said previously. I'm ripping off basically all my favorite. It's going to be a creature feature set in space, but I'm shamelessly self-promoting it in that kind of regards. So it's going to be taking things from John Carpenter's The Thing. It's going to be taking things from Ridley Scott's Alien, meshing them into one big ball of hopefully something that I'm going to put my own original quirk on it. But yeah, I'm lifting stuff because that's how you do it, right? You steal from the best.
Nice. Yeah, if you're going to steal, do it right.
Yeah. But probably not. Hopefully first draft this year, but if not, then it's going to be next year.
Cool. Yeah, well, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see everyone next time. Stay away from AI. Watch out. Be careful out there.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cool.